And we are live. Welcome to the Kevin White Show with the music in the background. I love it. So tonight, our guest. Let me do this first. We are on 2 different platforms, soon to be 3. And here we go. All right. So this is the Kevin White Show. The Kevin White Show / the American Allegiance Radio Show. We welcome Ms. Brooke Carlock to our program. She is, you can explain to everybody who you are and what you do better than I can.
Okay.
So
I can do that. Do you want the short version or the long version?
Whatever you want to do.
So yes, my name is Brooke Carlock, and I am a grief educator and I have a YouTube channel and social media channels. And I also do one-on-one grief support. And it is quite the story how I got into this line of work. Basically, I guess, would you just like me to go into my story?
Yes, please do.
So I was no stranger to grief and loss when I was younger. I lost my favorite grandfather when I was 10, lost all my grandparents by the time I was in my early 20s. And then when I was also in my 20s and early 30s, I lost my sister. She actually died of pneumonia. It was like a freak thing. And she was only 32 and had 2 little kids. So that was kind of like my first real introduction to, like, you know, this stuff happens. It happens to pretty much anyone. And then my sister-in-law, Heather, also passed away. She had complications from a surgery and was sick for a long time. And then things were quiet for a little bit. And then in about a span of a year and a half, first, my dad died of a heart attack. He was driving home from work and must have knew something was wrong, pulled to the side of the road, and ended up dying on the side of the road.
So sad.
And that was a complete surprise. I had just seen him, just had dinner with him. And I was going through all of the funeral arrangements with my stepmom. And then on the day of my dad's funeral, which was 10 days later, somewhere around there, I went to the funeral and I was waiting. And then I ended up getting a phone call that my stepmom had died. She committed suicide on the day of my dad's funeral. So I was left to kind of be in charge of his funeral and do all of the things that she was supposed to do. So that was a shock. So then, you know, she had a brother. I helped him plan her funeral. So it was like 2 funerals right in a row. And then that December, so that was about a month and a half after that happened, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So we started a very long battle with her, fighting pancreatic cancer. And then 4 months after my dad and stepmom passed away, the worst possible thing that could ever happen to anyone happened. I got the phone call from my ex-husband that 2 of our kids had been in a car accident, and he didn't know at the time when he called me what the outcome of that was. He was just screaming into the phone, "I think they're dead." And it was my oldest son, who was 18 at the time, and my 10-year-old daughter, Libby. And by the time I got to the accident site, we found out that my daughter, Libby, had died in the car accident. So she was gone. My son, Max, my oldest son, he had an injury. They had gotten him out of the car, but he was unconscious. They took him in an ambulance to the hospital, and they weren't sure of the extent of his injuries at that point. So, so that was, I mean, it was what you could imagine. You know, it's the worst thing any parent can imagine.
Wow, that's a short span of time.
It was. And after my daughter died, I can get back into more of what happened with my daughter, but then after she died, then obviously I was grieving incredibly at that point. But then my mom kept getting worse and worse from her cancer. And then, long story short, she ended up passing away about 8 months after that. So it was in a span of a year and a half that I lost my dad, my stepmom, my daughter, and my mom.
Oh my
In a
goodness.
year and a half.
I can't even imagine that, That's really hard. I can't fathom that.
Most people
That's
can, and luckily most people don't have to.
Yeah. And they're young ages, and it's not like they're like when they get into their 80s or something. This is all tragedies.
Exactly. And it was all different types of grief. That's what kept hitting me. Like everyone was different. And I had to deal with the sudden death with my dad, and you expect that your parents are going to pass away before you, but he was in his early 70s, and I thought doing okay. There was no indication that anything was wrong. So it was kind of like that shock of that, but then also the suicide aspect with my stepmom. She had overdosed on pills and alcohol, and
were you angry at her when she did that?
I was, honestly. Yes, I was. It was mostly because I didn't get to experience my dad's funeral the way that I wanted to. I feel like, I'd helped her plan everything, but assumed that she would be greeting all of the friends, the people that I didn't know. A lot of people, obviously, I know the people in my family, but the other people, I had no idea who so many of them were. So I was angry that instead of spending that time thinking about my dad and mourning my dad, I was busy introducing myself to people and explaining what happened. And, I was upset that it kind of took the focus off of my dad for that day.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, looking back at it now, I think anyone who knows her, would probably agree with me. I don't think I'm saying anything that I shouldn't say here, but she was an alcoholic and had a lot of problems, and my dad took care of her, basically. So I'm hoping that in her mind, it was a way to kind of let everyone else off the hook, because someone would have had to take care of her. She wouldn't have been able to live on her own. She was that ill, from her disease. And I think she just assumed that she couldn't live without my dad, and she was probably right. And she didn't have the best relationship with anyone in my family. So yeah, it was I hate to say it was a little bit of a relief afterwards, because there was no question of, okay, what are we going to do? Like, where is she going to go? Who's going to take care of her? So it kind of took that out of the equation.
So how old were you when that happened? When your father?
I was 42.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, it wasn't that long ago. I'm 45 now, so
mm-hmm.
It was coming up on 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, all I can say is she's in a better place, your daughter. So.
Yes. So my daughter was definitely. There's no other experience like that. And I think it was so tough because she was just incredible. She was 10 years old, but I love talking about her because she was such a light in people's lives. She was just sunshine, just complete sunshine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, she was a dancer. She was a competitive dancer. Dance was like her life. And that kind of gave me a purpose right away. um, her her dad, my ex-husband, and I ended up starting an organization called Live Like Libby. So we raise money for dancers who are in financial need in her honor, which is amazing. Like, I think she would be so proud of that. And I love doing that. But her loss was just so overwhelming for me that I ended up within a few weeks of her passing away. Um, I ended up checking myself into a day program at a mental hospital
Mhm.
just to try to deal with just the overwhelm of the whole thing of, why was it my 10-year-old? Why, she was literally like the perfect thought, everyone thinks they have perfect kids, I'm sure, but she really was
Yeah,
just, she was just so
right.
amazing. The kid who would be friends with anyone and would, invite someone to sit with her at lunch if they were lonely. And it was just so, I was so angry that it was someone who was so good. And so I did that program
Yeah,
and
yeah, I got.
sorry, I missed that. It cut out.
No, I just, it is heartbreaking. It's a heartbreak. I mean, just a series of events, one after another.
Yeah.
So is your son okay? Did he recover?
Yes, he is
Okay.
fine now. Thank you for asking. He ended up having, he did have a head injury. He ended up with a concussion. It was the most bizarre thing, Kevin. Like, I didn't think that anything like this happened in real life. I thought it was just in movies, but he, seriously, he got to the hospital. And when we got there, I mean, we're obviously in shock because, our daughter's dead. And his brain somehow was on a delay. It was about a 15-second delay.
Uh-huh.
So actually, it was about 30 seconds, about 30-second delay. So we would tell him something and he'd ask, like, where am I? Why am I at the hospital? And we'd explain it to him. And 30 seconds later, his mind would reset and he would forget everything that we just told him. And
Oh
it was
boy.
it was the most bizarre thing I have ever experienced. But I look back and I tell people now, like, I am almost glad because he's fine now, so I can say this, but I'm almost glad that that was happening at the time because it gave me something else to focus on because I was so worried about him and it was so weird with him losing, his memory every 30 seconds. It got to the point where, like, you know, we're at the hospital for hours and telling him the same thing over and over, knowing that he'll forget, that we just started. I mean, we got to the point where we were laughing, which seems almost impossible, but he would say, like, why is everybody here? Where am I? And we're like, don't worry, you'll forget in 30 seconds anyway. It was just,
So
it was
interesting
crazy.
because I had a
It was
concussion
so
once.
bizarre.
I had a
Yeah.
concussion and I could not. The weird thing was I could do something and forget. Like I picked up something and I didn't know what it was. I had to look at my hand and I couldn't tell last week, 2 weeks ago from 2 minutes ago.
Oh
So
my
your
God.
brain suffers until it recovers. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Brain
he's
is
fully recovered.
crazy. So he is fully recovered now. It took until the 30-second thing stopped. That stopped the next day. So that didn't last too long, which was good.
Good.
But then it took a couple months. He was in college at the time. He had to take off of school for a while. And they immediately, because he was driving the car when my daughter died. And
Oh,
that, yes. So as you can imagine,
oh boy.
a lot to
No,
live
I
with.
can't.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we had him immediately. We were connected with, like, a trauma therapist and that kind of thing. So he was in therapy immediately, and we just did everything we could to let him know that we knew it was an accident. It could have happened to anybody. I think we did a very, very good job of letting him know that nothing that happened changed our feelings about him. He was an incredibly responsible kid, a responsible driver. We used to make fun of him saying he drove like a grandma. I mean, because he was, and he always made sure everything on his car was working really well. And the accident actually happened because his check engine light came on, and he had called my ex-husband. They were on their way to his house, and he had called my ex-husband and said, my check engine light came on. What do I do? Because he was afraid to drive with his check engine light on. And my ex-husband had told him to pull into a market that they were coming up on. And my son went through a stop sign because he was just concentrating on getting to the market, and he went through a stop sign, and they got hit by a truck. And yeah, it's just one of those, I mean, it really could happen to anyone. So he has to live with that for the rest of his life, but everyone that knows him knows, that he would do anything to change the way things were, to redo. Luckily, he doesn't remember the actual accident at all. He remembers getting in the car and driving. He doesn't remember anything about the actual accident. He only remembers waking up at home after he had already come home from the hospital.
Yeah, so I can understand that.
He kind of, his brain, luckily, like I said, the brain's amazing. It has blocked out everything directly related to the accident, which is good. So I hope.
Yeah. It may be a coping mechanism at the same time. So I've interviewed people or mothers who had lost their children that I know they're friends of mine, but theirs are lost to illegal aliens and accidents. I have 3 of them, or 4 or 5, and I've had like 3 on my show. And the grief it's hard for them to end and to move on. It's very hard. And I think there are a couple, I invited a couple on to not to be on the show, but to be in the audience. And they say the same thing, but there's this little more anger because it's against something that should not have happened. But you cannot prevent accidents from happening. I've been in them myself, right? Been in accidents where I made mistakes, and when I was younger, when I was his age. So
yeah, we're human. Everyone does. That's a big part of the grief process, is just holding on to that anger doesn't hurt anyone but you. I mean, right. so yeah, it took a while to learn that and process it. But after a while, it's the same thing as guilt. If you feel guilty about things in grief, you're really only hurting yourself. It's just making your healing more prolonged and difficult.
I agree. I totally agree. It's hard, but at the same time, I'm not going to say you learned something from it, but you're probably a lot more conscious of how things are done, and you probably look out for the family a lot more now than you ever did. Not saying you didn't, but you're worried.
It's kind of a weird mix of, obviously, yes, like I worry. I have my 2 sons now. They're 20 and 18, and it is a weird dynamic now because Libby was, because she was only 10 when she died. I was expecting to be like a mother of a young kid for a long time, and I kind of got immediately thrown into that almost empty nest. Like my younger son, he graduated, that following year, and they both moved out. So it was just, I went from having this big family to there's no one here but me. It was very bizarre.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So, okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say part of me, kind of to go back to what you were saying about being nervous about the family, like part of it is almost the opposite, where it's kind of like, I feel like the worst has possibly happened. So now I look at things a little bit more like stuff bothers me a lot less than it used to, because nothing in comparison is going to be as bad as what happened. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what else could happen? So I just kind of look at it like, all right, everything from here is, it can't get much worse. So,
So your father died when you were age 42.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't expect that. My dad died when I was 49, and it's a little more understandable. But he was only 73.
Mm.
But at the same, he had a lot of health issues. But
Yeah.
but it wasn't sudden like that. That's what makes everything real.
Yeah.
A little too real is when things are sudden, and yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, it did. And my dad was larger than life, like
Mhm.
both physically and in personality. He was 6'5", big, like Hulk of a guy, and just
Mhm.
dominated a room and was just the life of
Yeah,
every party. And yeah, it was just one of those, like, how could something possibly happen to him? It's like he's one of those
right.
people you just would never think anything bad would ever happen to, or nothing could happen to him. He's so big and strong, and
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, we're humans, and we don't know what's going to happen to us. And
yeah, exactly.
but you think of your dad as somebody who's going to be around. You know, my dad was the same way. He was like 6'5". He was like a basketball star in high school, and your hero. And all of a sudden, it's just the way. I mean, we're just subject to gravity and this Earth atmosphere, and whatever we eat, we pay for later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Oh, well. Um, so I could, if you'd like, I could talk a little bit about how I got into what I do now. And
Sure. Yes. Please
um,
do.
so after Libby died, I think I started to say this earlier. I went to the mental hospital. I came out of the mental hospital, and one of the things that they taught me there was the importance of journaling. So they had me journaling a lot, and I was writing, and I've been a writer, like a published writer,
Mhm.
for a long, long time, and have written for different websites and magazines and things like that. And writing has always kind of been my outlet, so that was what I gravitated towards, um, for helping me just get my feelings out.
Right.
And people kept asking me how I was and how I was doing, so I decided to make a blog and just write everything I was feeling, and then just put it all on the blog. And then if people ask how I'm doing, I'd just be like, okay, here you go. Like, if you really want to know, because sometimes people ask and they just want you to say, I'm okay, and then move on. But other people, actually really want to know. So for the people who really wanted to know, I made the blog, and and I just found a ton of people reading it. Like, people were finding it that I didn't know, and that shocked me. Um, and then I started having people commenting and saying, like, thank you so much for being open and honest about grief. And people don't talk about this
Yeah.
stuff out loud. Like, they don't say what you're saying, and we know people are feeling it, but so they were just thanking me for voicing things that they were thinking. And
Yeah. It's good to open it up and talk about it, because
yeah,
it's one thing it's hard to share with anybody else because you don't think they understand. But there are people out there that have been through the same thing.
yep. So it started out as a way to help me,
Right.
honestly, um, just for my processing. And then the longer it went on, the more and more people I had commenting how much it was helping them. And then it kind of morphed into, like, people started asking me questions and things like that. So I actually ended up, and this was months and months later, I ended up getting certified as a grief educator, and studied all kinds of stuff, about grief. And I've been a teacher for 22 years. So it was just sort of in my nature to, like, then take it to YouTube and just start talking to people and kind of teaching them about grief. And that was kind of how my channel started. And yeah. And then it was just people saying, like, can I talk to you one on one? It's like, okay. So everything just sort of kept building and building, and that's kind of where we're at now. It was called, my page and my YouTube channel originally was called Grieving Mommy.
Hmm.
And that's probably still how most people know me, as Grieving Mommy. Um, but then I opened it up a little more. Now I just make it Brooke Carlock, because I had a YouTube person, and who apparently knows what they're doing, tell me that they thought my name was too limiting because I'm really talking the things that I teach are they apply to people who have lost children, but can work for anyone. So since I'm kind of talking to anyone who's suffering from grief, I just decided to make it Brooke Carlock Grief Support, just to kind of welcome more people into the fold. So yeah, that was how we got here. And then I also have the Live Like Libby organization, and I do that also. So my plate is full to the point where sometimes I have to be careful that I'm not keeping myself too busy so that I'm not processing my grief.
That's a key right there. That really helps. Yeah, my plate is really full as well. I got too many things going on, but I enjoy this. I can only do this once a week. So have you written a book yet?
I have, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
So my book it hasn't been published yet. So I'm still, I'm finished writing it. Right now it is with the editor. I'm actually supposed to be getting it back this week to make whatever revisions I need. And then I'm going to be self-publishing. So I'm hoping that it will be out at the beginning of 2024. That's my goal, but it is called Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to, which is, it's kind of my whole philosophy like that. My whole vibe is I'm just blatantly honest. And that's what I just tell people, how do you get through it? It sucks.
And I could relate to that. You can relate because that's reality. I think that's going to be a grabbing, title. It's going to be a title that will grab people.
I hope so because like I said, it's sort of my motto. Grief sucks, but the whole rest of your life does not have to complete. And that's how you feel when you're in the thick of it. You just feel like the rest of your life is pointless and why bother? And I'm going to be miserable forever. And are you going to be sad forever? Probably. You're going to have moments of sadness. You're going to miss your person like crazy forever.
Right.
Does the rest of your life have to be morbid and terrible? No, it does not. So the book is basically kind of weaving in my experiences. So it has like a little bit of autobiography, but then it's mostly about a system that I came up with to kind of help walk people through. I hate to say like healing, because I don't think you ever heal from something like losing a child, but just moving forward and striving to have hope that it can get better. So
I don't want to get political, but when you think about people who get rid of their children on purpose, or they put them in adoption, and something you could probably never imagine doing, and they don't realize what they have sometimes. And so that's another thing, but just thinking about that.
That's another topic.
So anyway, speaking of your book, can't wait for it to come out.
Thank you.
I could like to promote it in the future. You could actually come back on when you have it ready.
I would love to do that. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Also, I actually have a publishing company. So
I heard from James Stevenson. You interviewed him.
Yes. How do you know James?
James and I, weirdly, I actually just interviewed him for my
really?
YouTube channel yesterday.
Really?
He and I met at Vid Summit, which I won a ticket. It's a YouTube convention, and I won my ticket. Was not expecting to go at all. It was like a drawing that I wasn't even expecting to be in on a YouTuber's channel, and I won. And it was like, you know what? It's not something I would ever normally do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna try and see how it goes. And I went, and James was one of the people that I met there, and he and I just sort of gravitated towards each other right away because both of our channels are about helping other people. Like we're both trying to help people who are hurting. So, in a sea of people who have video game channels and things like that, he and I were ones like, okay, well, how do we create these businesses where our focus is on helping other people?
Exactly.
and I just loved his idea, his channel. So yeah, that was it. And we've just been keeping in touch ever since then. And that is how I know James, but that is how I was actually, that's how I found out about you.
So, oh my goodness, James is fantastic in his program, and I know 3 of his high school friends
Oh, really?
that have been on my show as well, and they're just the guys people from Utah. Everybody I've met has been like amazing, really good people. So yeah, I like them because they're genuine people.
Mm-hmm.
They're up for good causes and everything. One of his friends gives homes to the homeless veterans, or not homes, but shelters for them to live in. And the other one, I published his wife's book, and he comes on my show every once in a while. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that is a great group of people there.
Yes, yeah, those are good people. There's good people and there's people, but you're one of those good people doing.
Thank you. I'm right. It's one of the hardest things. I mean, grief is, it's just one of the hardest things to go through, and I feel like people just do not talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And I kind of just like to be that voice of like, I know how hard it is, but I also know. I remember going in, one of the big things that kind of led me to the book and to doing this in general was I would go on Facebook, since you're streaming this to Facebook is appropriate. But like when this first happens, you go looking for grief groups, or, you're looking anywhere for people out there that have gone through the same thing, because you want to see like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to be okay? And I'd go in these Facebook groups, and it was so depressing, because there were some amazing supportive people, but then there were other people who were, were like 20 years out from losing their loved one, and they were still like having trouble getting out of bed and functioning. And for someone who had just experienced something so traumatic, it was terrifying, because I'm like, oh my gosh, is this how my life is going to be 20 years from now? Am I still going to be in a Facebook group saying that I'm crying every day? Like that's not what my daughter would want for me, or my dad, or my mom. Like they would just be mad at me if 20 years from now I'm crying in bed all the time. And I was like, that was kind of my my push. Like, what do I do to not end up like that, basically? So that's what I hope to do. That's what I hope to teach other people. Not that I'm going to make your life perfect, not that there's a quick fix, because there's not. It's work. I mean, you have to, all big stuff requires work. You can't just skate through it. Right. But it can get better. So that's what I'm trying to do, is just be honest with people, but then also give them hope.
Yeah. That's, people who understand, only people who understand can comfort other people.
Yep.
So just like you and James. So, I mean, he's been there, he did that, and he had his mentor, but we don't have a dad that messes you up. You can't really, it's hard to do that. And that happens a lot in the minority communities where there's no dad, and the kids don't have that reinforcement. And luckily you had your dad.
I did. I told James, my parents were divorced, so I saw my dad every other weekend. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I even said to him, like, I was a single mom too. And I said, as a single mom, like, I love watching his videos. And I think there's so many people, he focuses, I know, on like young men, but so many people could find his work helpful. So I love promoting anything James does, because
much needed.
He's just such a nice guy. He's like the guy everyone wishes they had.
You don't get any nicer than him.
No, honestly.
He's a great guy. Anyway, anything else you want to talk about or say? I don't know what else you got.
No, brewing? I don't think so. I mean, if anyone is interested, my YouTube channel is, you can just type in Brooke Carlock. You can just Google Brooke Carlock, Carlock, like you lock your car, and find me. pretty much all over. I have a website. If anyone is grieving and wants, I mean, I have a ton of free resources on my website that people can download, and I have all my videos on YouTube. So tons of things that you don't have to pay for
Right.
on purpose, because they're, I don't. That's one of the things, I guess, and James and I talked about that too. When you are helping people, it sometimes it just feels it's hard to like charge for some of the stuff, but I do charge for the one-on-one
Yes.
stuff I do, but that is also available, and that information can be found on my website.
That's excellent. Excellent. I like what you're doing. So there are people that come on that do things, and yours has a lot of meaning to it, just like James and all these other people who are doing things to join these groups. I think, the people I talked about earlier, they actually belong to a group for specifically for parents who lost, their children, on the border or illegal aliens. And that helps a lot, helps a whole lot. So I can see what you're doing.
It's highly specific like that. Yeah, yes. That's great.
And then that you have this group, and you can actually promote your group. I know you already do on YouTube and everything, but a lot of people probably don't know about it. I've never heard of anything like that, but I never had been in that situation. So
yeah, I just have I don't have like a group. I'm actually working on like an online group program. I have right now I have one-on-one sessions with people. So I have a choice of like a 12-week program package thing, but it's all one-on-one, like just me and the other person. And then I have individual sessions. Like if you'd rather not do the full 12-week thing, then you can just do one-on-one with me, as needed. That way also, if you're struggling financially, that's, it's a much smaller, I wanted to make it accessible for more people. So yeah, you can just kind of sit down with me one-on-one, and mostly I'm a listening ear. Like I said, nothing that I'm doing is that groundbreaking. It's nothing that, hasn't been said before. I just kind of look at myself like that honest best friend that's kind of, instead of you, I'm a total nerd. So I've already done all the research for you. And
there you go.
I'm someone who just sort of packages it up and gives it to you in a straightforward yet comforting way, hopefully.
So you're a consultant, an experienced consultant then. And have you thought about doing groups?
I have actually. Like I said, I'm working on when the book comes out, there's actually going to be a group that goes along with that, kind of working through the steps in the book.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd be happy to come back on again if you have me when that is out and ready.
Yeah, when you get that ready, because I love promoting books. That's the thing. And yeah, we will make something happen there. Because I like that, and that's the best medium to get it out.
Yeah,
put it on Amazon, grieving, and you'll see it in there. It'll be #1 book for the first couple of weeks or so. Depends. All
right. Well, that's not that I need to be #1. I just would love for more people to know that there's help out there. So
once you release it, it's automatically #1 for however long. So yeah, we're gonna be in the top 10 in the grieving book. The grieving kind of situation, psychology, maybe somewhere in there, it's going to be categorized because of how you label it and everything. So, but you take a screenshot of it when you do that. #1 book in grieving is fine. Yes, that's what you do. As soon as you release it, it comes out. You're like, okay, where is it? I'll tell you the ranks in there. Also. Self-publishing, you're going to put that on Ingram Spark as well, and things like that. Okay, great. Because now it's free. It used to be $49 to do each book. Now it's free, so it's awesome.
I'm very excited about the book. I've always wanted to publish a book. It's been kind of like a life goal. So it's another gift that Libby has given me.
And it's fantastic. People want your autograph. I love it because, hey, can you sign my book? People will send me their book to my house. I sign it and I send it back. and they give me the postage for it. And it's like magic. Then you go to these conferences and you go to these different places and you schedule yourself with other people, other organizations. You could even do hospitals, things like that. And then you're the speaker. And I'm working with the hospital network right now for my book, but different opportunities you'll have, travel, people ask you to come somewhere else. And
I am looking forward to that, honestly, because that is one of my goals. Like I said, I've been a teacher for 22 years and I'm planning on going to 25 years. So I'm trying to build up things like that. I love to speak in front of people. Like I love speaking in front of crowds, and which is crazy because I'm very introverted, but for some reason I can do this. And
well, you got passion. You have passion for something. It works out.
Exactly. And I am. I mean, because what else when you've had all that stuff happen to you, like it's one of those things. If I wouldn't do something with it, then what is the point? You know, what is the point of all of that bad stuff happening if I don't use it to help other people and to help me do something that I love doing is how I look at it. So
there's nothing like getting in a car or getting on a plane for the only purpose is for you to speak. And you take this is nothing like it, nothing at all. So I wish you the best.
And look forward to that. Hopefully, happening.
So when you get it ready and you get it published, and I would love to have you back. Just when that is. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Come on now before that's done and let me get my story and word out. And
yeah, that'd be awesome.
What you do.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ms. Brooke Carlock.
Yes.
And you have a fantastic mission.
Thank you.
I'll just call it a mission because that's what it is.
It is. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome.
All right. Well.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Good rest of your evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. On the stage. All right. That was Brooke Carlock. Amazing. She's doing something really good for other people who need this, people with grief. And let's go back to the music. Anyway, that'll do it for tonight. And I'm going to simulcast this on Blog Talk Radio. And that will be real soon, Wednesday. So this is going to be a Wednesday show as well, so I won't have that. This is the last segment to accommodate guests. Here we go. All right, Bob James again, my favorite. So have a good evening. I just want to thank Soul Sunshine for my interview yesterday. It was fantastic. Great people. Thank you very much. I also want to thank George Magazine for publishing my article. So bigger things to come. I don't know if you get bigger than George, but we do have some things waiting in the week. On to lower goals for that. So, and I love doing that kind of stuff. And book number 2 will be started. We're fleshed out. We're going to flesh that out. So, where that goes. It's a lot of time and dedication. I have a lot of that, but I'm going to try to get this done. And thank you for joining us, the Kevin White Show, the Revolution Show. And we will be back next week. If I'm not a guest somewhere else, I think I'm scheduled for 2 more. But anyway, it is what it is. Have a good night. God bless America. And thank you.